from the campaign trail to the southwest, and the difficult task of balancing heavy industry, big royalties and public health. Resource projects may be underpinning the state's prosperity, but to what extent are governments safeguarding the community from the possible downside, pollution? It's the subject of a new book which focuses on one of the state's longest-running conflicts. Under Corporate Skies traces the story of Yarloop, where residents have enlisted the help of American activist Erin Brockovich in their battle with mining giant Alcoa. Claire Moody has the story.
There was definitely something in the air down there.
When I get into the plume, I get very distressed. I can't breathe.
Well, if they got health concerns, why stay in the town? I'd sell up and move out, move on. Leave us alone and leave Alcoa alone.
It looks like any other country town, peaceful and picturesque. But under the surface, there's one issue that continues to divide this small community.
A lot of people come in and they reckon they can smell it. Good on them. But I've never smelled it.
When the wind's blowing from the refinery, it's usually a gentle wafting breeze with an inversion layer. That's when I get sick.
For years, residents in Yarloop, including John Harris, have been trying to prove that fumes from Alcoa's nearby Wagerup refinery have caused health problems. He's been monitoring weather patterns and recording his symptoms for 7 years in the hope of identifying a trend.
You can see the 21st of January was the first time this year that I had any problem with eye stinging, sneezing, restricted breathing.
Many other residents with health complaints have fled, taking advantage of a scheme run by Alcoa to buy up land in Yarloop. Although there's resentment over that too. Terry Cockerham and his wife now live in this park home near Mandurah after cutting their losses and shelving their plans to retire in Yarloop.
I decided to live there for the funeral when I was 110.
But that didn't happen?
No, the funeral didn't happen and we had to get out of there, else the funeral would have happened, I think.
But despite numerous studies, a parliamentary inquiry, even this opinion from a forum of experts set up in 2001, there's still no proven toxicological link between the Wagerup emissions and the health problems experienced by some residents. Now, a new book documenting the Wagerup saga is heavily critical of the handling of the conflict by Alcoa and successive state governments.
I think the value of this book is that it effectively examines the anatomy of an industrial disaster, a slow disaster if you like.
I've lived and worked in these refineries for many years and you know, while people can write a book, there's some of those claims, as I said, are dead wrong.
Standing by the book is Dr. Martin Brueckner, who together with fellow author Diane Ross interviewed 500 people from the community, government and industry on the Wagerup case.
Well, we hope to ignite a debate that Australia is yet to have about how the impacts of development are being balanced against the interests of community and society as a whole.
They have a right to write a book. I have a right to disagree with what's in the book. The important bit for me is Alcoa has to make sure that it has safe operations, and we've done that.
The book doesn't prove one way or another whether the emissions have caused the health problems at Yarloop, but it does make wider judgments about the way industry is regulated in WA.
There's never been a time in Western Australia where tighter regulation on corporate polluting emissions has been more needed. We're seeing issues around a whole range of industrial facilities in Western Australia at the moment.
The book cites disproportionate industry protection and subsidy under State Agreement Acts, a void of independent scientific expertise in WA in the area of industrial pollution, and inadequate legislation governing heavy industry in WA.
It's a regulatory regime that's controlled by industry for industry with a very weak police force in terms of environmental regulation.
They're based on international standards. They're not easy regulations to meet. We spend a lot of money on research and development to make sure we can meet those regulations.
And there's also disagreement over the book's premise that the corporate dollar is being given priority ahead of the health of people and the environment.
I think we've got a pretty good balance in Western Australia, quite frankly, between protection of the environment and economic development.
Industries in Western Australia are responsible. They have good credentials in terms of their own values and their own beliefs. But I also think that people should acknowledge that we're never going to satisfy 100% of the people in every community.
Meanwhile, the question over whether Wagerup is safe could be decided by the courts. John Harris is one of 300 people who are part of a class action against Alcoa, claiming emissions from its 3 refineries in WA have caused health problems. The group was assisted by US campaigner Erin Brockovich, who's also endorsed this controversial new book.
Whitnum, 30 years on, people started to get sick. So we don't know what the future holds for us. We're living from day to day.
Industry has done a lot of studies, and they find that if they have a community which is antagonistic, that lasts 5 to 7 years and then falls away. We've done 14 years now, and we are going to fight to the end.
But that's not a threat that's facing Alcoa, the world's biggest producer of alumina and the employer of 4,000 people in WA. It's still considering an expansion which would double Wagerup's capacity.
There's not a time frame. We'll look for the right opportunity when it's appropriate to expand. We will do that.
Meanwhile, Under Corporate Skies is due for release this weekend, with its authors hoping that lessons can be learned from the Wagerup conflict.
I think there needs to be a recognition that small communities matter, and I think we need to remind ourselves as to who the intended beneficiaries of economic development are.
Not surprisingly, the book is receiving a mixed reaction here in Yarloop. For some, it's a story that has to be told, but for others, it's an unwelcome reminder of a dark chapter they'd rather forget.
Hey, I'm quite concerned about the book. Yeah, if it destroys the town, you know, it's a shame.
I don't think it's in Yarloop's past, I think it's in Yarloop's present. It's ongoing. The book hopefully will draw a lot of attention to it. Erin Brockovich has put her name to it, and that must tell a story in itself.